Please be advised all the video in this is B-roll footage that was supplied by Focus to make sure that any story parts that they didn't want to be shown weren't shown. So I'm just going to talk over some of the B-roll sections that I've edited around and discuss what I got to see. Recently, I got to sit down with a somewhat exclusive preview, hands-on, with some levels for Tale Requiem, the sequel to Asobo's original game that came out of nowhere to tell the story of siblings in a fictional past where one of them is afflicted with a dark power that slowly begins to corrupt them, the world's longest escort mission, and it turned out to be incredible. Chased by a mysterious leader bent on capturing them, Tale was one of those standouts for the year, and it won a couple Game of the Year awards, and rightly so. Asobo announced the sequel a year or so afterwards, and we are getting very close to its release point. Thanks to Focus for the chance to spend many hours with the sequel and a couple levels inside. Also remember, I don't contact people in the comments about game giveaways in the way that the bots are showing. So if you see a bot asking you to contact them in any way, you know it's fake. Report it instantly as spam, since YouTube doesn't care at all about that. As always, subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, smash the like button, whatever. Leap into the comments. I would like to know what you guys thought of the original Plague Tale and if you're excited for the new one. Also, make sure to subscribe. I'll have a large amount of content for the new Assassin's Creed stuff that is coming out at the end of this week as well. First, I think we can give a brief nod to just how awesome Amicia and Hugo were in the first game. The original game and its name reflected that desire to show two kids whose life had suddenly turned to dog crap and their subsequent realization that young isn't protected in the 1300s. It's victimized. The sequel shows a growth to both characters almost instantly. Even when moving to the south where the darkness hasn't taken over, that doesn't necessarily mean it's all sunshine and rainbows, though it may appear to be. There's an instant duality here as well, with the characters profoundly lacking in that initial innocence that they had in the first game, but it's displayed here in a slightly different way, with both of them looking towards this moment as a future that may start where things might end up like the end of a one-hour TV show, all wrapped up nicely in a bow. But if it did that, it'd probably be the shortest game in history. The game starts out with Hugo having dreams about a two-horned island somewhere distant, and he and Amicia escape to the far south to find it and see if they can control Hugo's powers, which consistently threaten to take him over. So the Whisper twins head off and begin a trek to discover what's really going on. But here we start to see already Amicia and the development and the desire to protect Hugo and what's actually happened and what the ramifications of that can be. And it's not always physical. If you've ever seen a boxer protects his wins by having a hard head, their faces look like the world's worst catcher's mitt. And like a shield that protects its owner but gets scars and battled throughout. The original game, Amicia consistently protected Hugo. And whether it's physical or invisible mental scars of what she's done, those are really starting to show. It's like the selfless protection of a mother's hand reaching out in front of you when she hits the brakes in a car. This lets Hugo also step forward a bit more here, a bit more confident, but still like Firestarter, a kid with insane power that consistently needs to be watched. Using those powers and stealth and smart planning, you're working together to travel through this larger world, consistently working through each location like puzzles with moving pieces. A true stealth game, more so than the original title and more than most other titles when they claim that in their description boxes on Steam. Hugo does have this immense power, and this is one of the few games where the new graphical ability in an engine works to play out the actual growth of a character in the game, with Hugo now able to control far more vast groups of rats than the original game. And you can see those changes in the game. Everything is really larger than it was initially, and that gives you a feeling even more so of what Hugo is capable of. Graphically, this also plays out everywhere. The game is phenomenal looking so far in the preview. The couple chapters I went through easily look as good as any AAA game, with the two working through sun-dappled fields, swaying with flowers, and frogs leaping through creeks, massive trees swaying in the breeze, and even some larger locations that remind you maybe a little bit about the end of the original title. Now, the developers have decided to move around and past that depressive and gloomy color of the original game to a much more vibrant land here in the south. They're still hub-based in that way where you go into a level and you explore it, but they're massive. Whether that works or ends up feeling stretched too thin is going to be a real question that we'll get the answer for when I do a review. Make sure to check it out here. But so far, the levels did not play like that. Instead, it requires thought and mastery of the tools that the team have. Hugo's dark power chewing through enemies like a younger brother of a Skaven and Vermintide, or Amicia with her many items and some new ones like tar bombs. You got your crossbows still and you're slinging rocks and throwing one of those into the dome of an enemy and hearing that clang as you rock a rock right off the side of their head is satisfying as always. But one place where in this preview the game has shown incredible depth and such confidence is in the facial expressions. Let me explain that for a second. Use for speech and how people pause during particular discussions and what they tell somebody with just their look is resonating here. Emotion versus verbal. When the characters are in trouble and someone sees them, there's this discussion that happens where one of the characters doesn't say anything, but the look on their face and the moment pause ends up telling far more of a story than any verbal description could. It's storytelling at a point where games should all be finally. And while some titles from Naughty Dog and a couple others have certainly done this well, Requiem shows that there's a confidence in that delivery, and it is so high that it puts itself out there and says, look at us. This is what we can do with just facial expressions and make it far more realistic than a lot of other titles. And this fits perfectly because Hugo and Amicia are not the talkative quip masters like the philosophy snark babblers, Nathan Drake, and so on. And it works perfectly for what I've seen of this. And I love the way it makes the discussion seem far more realistic. But it's the lighting that is improved throughout, even during those moments shining off some character's face, and the excellent use of most of the facial textures, but also just within the chapters and locations themselves. It's an incredible jump, like exploring a small village and seeing the people working through locations, chopping wood, discussing religions, hanging out, watching ducks. It's the game's desire to not throw it all in your face with huge moments, but instead offer that natural beauty of nature that people can see when they go on a hike. While the game has moved to a different location, the best part is that the game still dives into the depths of a lot of dreary looking places, like tunnels lifted up by flickering torches, and that darkness and the difference between light and dark that you explore, and certainly does reflect the duality of the characters that you're actually playing. And it's consistently giving you this feeling of being absolutely safe and absolutely dangerous at the exact same time. Even the age-old effect of soaking out the color when you take over the rat horde just feels better now. It focuses you on moving them around and lets you see the rats themselves, watching the beating hearts speed up of the enemies as they're moving around the levels looking for whatever it is that terrorizes them. This also helps when moving through the town, like I mentioned before. The fanciful laid-back look of the town versus the darker locations reminded me of the original game, and I love the dichotomy there because it's trying to build on something that they've already made, but also show you the differences, but at the same time, never feel alien. If you think that's easy, well, we've seen a lot of games where you can see that it's not. Stealth also continues to play that massive role that we saw in the original game. And that soft stealth that they use here just really works. It makes you focus much more on the game. And the ability here to get away from enemies if they've seen you and hide, or counter a lot of enemies with quick strikes to blind and hobble them. It just feels like everybody's matured a bit. However, since I was jumping into the game mid-level and not right from the start, it isn't always clear what the characters knew instantly and what they're just expected to know. One thing I do know is in the preview, the sound is excellent. It was on point, flooding all the channels of the audio with filtered in moments from the towns, enemies searching you, able to pick them out and who is doing what purely from the audio coming into you. This is something that's vital for stealth, and we've seen some games miss this. Things like occlusion and reflection in some of the more busy locations, and the echo of a far-off enemy looking for these twins that might have done some seriously heinous stuff. You can hear that filter in and actually hear that gruffness from that character. Even though they're far away, there's something about their way they're handling the audio processing here that seems like a big step up. I got to admit, I know Asobo is incredibly talented, but I was really surprised just how much this has stepped up in the looks department. It's stunning to see that jump in the presentation, especially when you take into account that the original game looked phenomenal all by itself. But the number of effects, the draw distance, the way the game's levels are built, it already feels like a massive step up. The question that remains is how all of this is going to pan out with those larger places, how stealth works, the new adjustments that you see to the powers and the abilities that both characters have. How all that's going to feel on larger chessboards of stealth is going to be the make it or break it point from Plague Tale Requiem. However, what I have played, it seems to have nailed that here in this preview. Plague Tale itself hit out of nowhere in many ways, sort of like Hellblade, but with less overt crazy lady protagonists. Things aren't always as they seem, and the game is already rolling out ideas and surprises, and to me it looks like they've understood exactly what they needed to do from the original to move it to a sequel, but at the same time still feel grounded and not make everything feel alien. The move to a different location is phenomenal and changes the initial feel, but there's always this awesomeness where you start to move from the sun-dappled grove into the shadows, And you almost instantly feel and realize why this game's called Plague Tale and not Healthy Story. Seeing how the bad guys work and who the main enemies for this title is going to be one of the other make it or break it points from here. But so far, in this preview time that I got to spend, what I saw is a game that really does look ready for prime time. Not only that, but there were just no issues that would indicate that this was a preview of a game coming forward. A lot of times you'll get that in betas, and these guys have always been open about me saying if there were technical issues, because I'm pretty fair on those things and I understand development and understand that a lot of games are being worked on right up until the point. And this one for sure is. But what we see and the way it moves and the animations and the different ways the game is already trying to spread out its storytelling wings, where at the same time not be completely different from the original, man, future looks a lot brighter than the story would have you believe. So anyway, that's it for me for my preview. I want to thank once again Focus for letting me sit down with this, spend many hours with it, and just walk around, interact with the world, and see all that we're going to be seeing for this. I'm excited for it. Let's just hope it ends up paying off as the review time comes up. Make sure to check out the channel, subscribe, thumbs up if you like it, share all these if you like the stuff, and hey, if you like good groups and good people to discuss things, you can check out the Discord. Most of my videos get adult rated anyway, and checking out the Discord, checking out the Patreon is always helpful. That's it for me. Peace out, and you'll be seeing more videos from me later this week. Oh, also check out the podcast on Spotify and all places where podcasts are listened to.